Hello and welcome to another Marvel video. Today we are going to talk about the WandaVision TV show of Season 1, Episode 5 and 6. Starting off the show where enough of Agatha came in the house, and unfortunately enough there was like an error of the acting and stuff. Like we're kind of like seeing into like a TV show where enough of they're just acting at this point and stuff. So she made like a mistake of what she was trying to say and stuff, and then she was trying to go back of where enough of like, hey, like let's start over and stuff. And then fortunately it made Wanda and Vision like confused of enough of just like are we like acting here, or are we being like real at this time? Because in a way enough it's kind of in a both situation where enough of it is like a show like we're watching, but they're actually acting because of the other people are seen in a TV show in the reality of Wanda's realm. For the twins, for Wanda and Vision, because last time of the episodes they had twins of two boys named Billy and Tommy, and then fortunately at this time something about magic, I believe enough, it made Billy and Tommy to grow up a little bit and stuff. So now we're actually seeing them more older at this time. So they went to like as a baby, and then now they're like kind of like, maybe like 5 years old, maybe 6 years old at this time, like as a kid, like a young kid and stuff. So this is like our first time seeing these characters at the first time, like I understand like we saw them as a baby and stuff, but this is like actually like their character in a way, and I thought that was kind of like a unique thing to them. And I really like the new intros we've been getting into the show and stuff, and it's like change in every episode to it and stuff. So like we're kind of getting like in the 80s and the 90s time version of these intros we're getting in the show. There was actually a scene where enough of Wanda, way before she went to the sword area just to see Vision's dead machine body and stuff. And we're going to see more those scenes in a different episode as well. The boys actually found a dog, I guess. I don't know where this dog came from, but they call him Sparky, and I think this was pretty huge in the this show as well. So fortunately enough, they beg to keep the dog, and then fortunately enough, there was a rule enough for Wanda and Vision like spoke to the boys enough of, if you want to keep the dog, you have to be this many to have the dog and stuff. And she was saying about like, well, you have to be 10 years old to keep the dog and stuff. And then fortunately enough, again, I don't know how this works in a way, but somehow enough they use magic to change their age and stuff. So they basically went to 5 to 10 years old boys at this time and stuff. And these are actually going to be more common of the actors playing Billy and Tommy at this point as well, because we're going to see more episodes, and also they're also playing these characters in a movie as well more later on. When Vision went to his job and stuff, one of his co-worker went up to him and stuff, and then he realized enough of what is actually like going on and stuff. He actually touched his mind and stuff, and So he was trying to reveal enough of what is actually really going on and stuff because he was kind of scared in the first place when he found out the real thing about what's going on and stuff. And he was saying it was her. So what we're talking about is actually Wanda, because Wanda is like kind of trapping these innocent people in her own realm and stuff. So they're kind of like trapped in this like city we're in Westview and stuff. And it's all Wanda's fault and stuff. And it's kind of crazy just to think about it and stuff. So they're not really acting as themselves. They're actually acting just for the TV show. Captain Taylor for the sword. Again, I already said enough. I don't like this character at all. In a way, I think he's just a bad person, and he really pissed Wanda off. And what really happened enough, because Monica Rambeau is now like kind of helping Sword right now, because she's like kind of like working with them and stuff. Her mother worked for Sword as well, so just something connecting to it and stuff. And then, fortunately enough, there was a plane. This was a different plane, like another thing to see what's going on and stuff. So Captain Taylor was trying to kill Wanda itself, and Monica Rambeau did not understand what was going on. So that was not like her plan, but it was his plan. And fortunately enough, it didn't go well because she took it the plane thing down and stuff. So now we're actually seeing what is out of the realm. So she came out of the realm with the plane and stuff, seeing all the swords out as well, and aiming their gun to her and stuff. And then at this time enough, she's actually speaking into her Russian accent at this point and stuff, because that's why we saw her was acting that in the first time we saw Wanda in the movies when Avengers Age of Ultron and stuff, because she is a Russian person and stuff. And then she was acting in American accent when we were having like in Captain America and the Civil War, so she can blend in with American people and stuff. They also like change her hair like a little bit enough of like with red or brown or something like that. I don't know what happened. I had a huge crush on Elizabeth Olsen and stuff, like even at the early time, especially enough from the Civil War movies. But yeah, she just like brought the Russian accent back and stuff, because that's what she really is and stuff. And then fortunately enough, for all her to aim the gun at her, she kind of did a move of enough, because this is kind of, again, I don't know if this is canon for Marvel and stuff, because fortunately enough, for Wanda and Pedro and stuff are actually related to Magneto and stuff, because that's their father in a way and stuff. In this situation enough, it's kind of similar what happened in X-Men with Magneto, where enough people were pulling a gun to him, and then he like kind of like forced into to the other people and stuff. And then what she did, she used her power to for the other people had the gun, was actually focus on Captain Taylor instead and stuff. So don't piss Wanda again, because you're gonna kill yourself in a way. And at the very end of this episode of episode 5, there was a person at the door, and I'm feeling Marvel was trying to do something similar at the time, where Mandalorian did like a crazy like cameo thing at the very end of their like final episode in season 3, I believe, when they had Luke Skywalker showing up and rescue Grogu, or Baby Yoda if you want to call him in that way and stuff. So they were trying to do the same thing, but fortunately enough, they brought Pedro back and stuff. But unfortunately enough, this is not Aaron Taylor Johnson, because that's what we had him in Age of Ultron and stuff. So now this is actually the X-Men from like First Class and well, I don't know, First Class. Like, I think in X-Men Day in the Future Past, and also X-Men Apocalypse, Pedro, in a way and stuff. And then this is actually the actor of Evan Peters playing. So it's so interesting enough of the Fox X-Men is kind of collaborating enough of with the MCU right now and stuff. So this was kind of interesting in some ways enough. I would definitely say it didn't hit the same way enough of with the Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian season 3 and stuff. It was just not the same. I think in the Luke Skywalker one was more hyped because they made it really hype. This just felt like a person just showed up at the door and said, like, like, oh, like, you know, I haven't seen my brother for a long time because he's supposed to be dead in some ways and stuff. But this is the typical thing where enough of this is another thing where enough we're gonna figure out enough of why this Pedro is actually here and stuff to more episodes or more into the TV show as well. Then we're gonna go into episode 6, and then they actually started with a the intro as well in this episode as well. Now this is kind of like in our 20s, like early 20s time version of the intro at this like timeline, I guess, and stuff. And it's Halloween, so they actually showed Billy and Tommy and stuff. Mostly Billy, unfortunately enough, is actually wearing Halloween costumes, but they're actually going as their comic book look of their own character and stuff. So Billy, as his superhero, is called Wicked and stuff. That's what he is actually dressed up in the comics and stuff. Tommy is actually dressed up as well, but not very, comic book form in some ways and stuff. But later on enough, he did have a costume later and stuff. And then Wanda and Vision did the same thing, where enough of they also cosplayed their own character as well in the comics as well and stuff. It's kind of interesting of that and stuff. And then Pedro and Tommy actually did the same thing and stuff. And this is kind of like back and forth, because I know in the comics, I think of enough of their like they went in two ways, where enough of they did went comic book look, but they went to the MCU as well, like where his suit is supposed to be green, I guess, in the comics and stuff. And then but fortunately enough, what we saw in Age of Ultron, Pedro had like a blue suit more often, so they kind of went in the comic book look, but with the blue with the MCU for Pedro and Tommy, because they have the same power of the speed. And for Billy, he's kind of like similar like Doctor Strange or his own mother of Wanda, because he's very, witch look like and stuff, like same powers. I thought this was kind of like a funny, interesting thing when they were going trick and treat outside with the other people and stuff, and they kind of like use their speed and their power of enough to steal candy and use like silly string to mess around with other people or trick-or-treating on Halloween and stuff. It was kind of silly. And there was also a very interesting thing where enough of Wanda was trying to figure out enough of why does Pedro look different, because again, it's not the same actor was playing in Age of Ultron, and this is the Fox universe, X-Men into this and stuff. And very interesting thing about this and stuff, Evan Peters and Aaron Taylor Johnson both were also in the same movie in Kick-Ass and stuff. Not Kick-Ass 2, but just in Kick-Ass, because I think change the actor in Kick-Ass 2 and stuff. But the first one, they had both. And it's very interesting enough, both of them played Pedro and stuff. Just one in the MCU and the other in the Fox universe. Vision was scoping around other places, and it just very looks not real and stuff. There was actually people were like going back and forth with things. Just didn't look normal and stuff, because again, this is kind of in a realm people were trapped, and it just didn't look the same. So it was kind of like in a loop or enough. They were going back and forth in situation, and Vision was seeing it and stuff. So it just didn't look good in a way. And then he found Agatha in a car, just in a car and stuff. And then fortunately enough, he did the same thing with his coworker and stuff. And then Agatha even told about what's going on, and Wanda is basically controlling this whole city of Westview and stuff. And then just went back, and she was like, again, acting in this way and stuff. And also she was dressed up as a witch because she is a witch as well. And then Vision kind of went out of the realm, and he was dying because fortunately enough, Vision shouldn't be alive at this point, because Vision is actually made by Wanda in this realm and stuff. So he shouldn't be exist at the time and stuff. And we're going to see more things why Vision is literally back in more episodes in the show as well, more later on and stuff. So he was kind of disappearing and stuff. And then Billy actually heard his father was in great danger and stuff. So Wanda kind of like totally expand the realm more out and stuff to make it more big, in the realm and stuff. And then when the swords were trying to run away and stuff, people got trapped in the realm, and it would change with them as well, because again, it's a TV show and stuff. So people were changing in different looks of what they are in, out of the realm and in the realm and stuff. So it's kind of very interesting, and that's how it actually ends. So there's going to be more interesting things that were going on in the other episodes as well. Don't want to talk about it because we haven't talked about it at this time and stuff. But it is getting interesting and stuff, and there's more towards it and stuff. And we're going to reveal enough of what is actually really going on with the realm, with Wanda and Agatha and Vision and the rest of the other people and stuff. Why she had boys and stuff at this point and stuff. What's to them and stuff. So it's really interesting in a way enough, because you could think about enough of Wanda is actually making her own family and stuff, and I'm thinking that's what she wants and stuff. So she didn't want other people to mess her up in some ways enough, because she's trying to live on her own world. And fortunately enough, it's not reality in some ways and stuff, but she's just making it as her own. And she, for Sword, in viewing of it and stuff, they're trying to stop her and stuff, and then she just not liking it and stuff, because again, she just want a family she loves and stuff. So that's the most biggest thing about that. But yeah, I'm excited for more of you guys to see these episodes in this TV show of WandaVision and stuff, and it's gonna get better and better and stuff. That's pretty much of that. Hopefully you guys like this video. Hit that like button, subscribe for more content like this. Have a nice day, and thank you for watching.